Tommy, thanks so much for joining us. We're excited to talk to you today. Um, Perhaps you could just start off and tell us a bit about the sort of the origin of Enaible. How did you come up with this idea, and what's been the journey since you started it?
Where did we come from? A very simple statement out of my mouth to a guy that I was coaching, and then I'll give the background of this. This said,
Yeah.
I said, you should use AI, and he said, great, do it. But let me get the let me set the table for that. Okay. So, my doctorate's in strategic leadership. I spent, I'll call them decades, okay, coaching CEOs of large companies around the world, writing books, living on a stage. Thought I was going to do it till the day I died. Loved it. Life was great. Got invited to be a visiting scientist at MIT. Was a touch skeptical on AI when this came to be, but it's safe to say I drank the AI Kool-Aid while I was there. Then one of the guys I'm coaching says to me, hey, Tommy, our productivity's flat. What should I do? And back to that story. I said, you should use AI. He goes, great, do it. And in my head, I thought, I drank the Kool-Aid. I don't know how to make the Kool-Aid. Very different aspect here.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I was having a midlife crisis or just kind of serendipitous moment. And I said, sure, let's give it a shot. I thought it was going to be a project. Went and hired a rock star team of data scientists. I didn't try to do that on my own. Fantastic team. And 6 months later, I looked at our early results come out and my jaw dropped. And I'm like, I wish I would have had this my whole coaching career. I'll get into what this is in a second. And I know everybody I've coached wishes they would have. Well, I don't coach anymore. I don't write books anymore. And Enaible went from being a project, and I started to say obsession. It is an obsession, but it's like all consuming, which I think goes with startup life.
Sure.
I'll pause there. Go for it.
Awesome. Well, I guess why don't you tell us a little bit about what the product is, and feel free to share your screen anytime it's helpful to visualize.
Yeah, let me start with what we're solving for, and then I'll come
Sure.
in and share my screen from that perspective. So basically, companies have some visibility on this process. They've never really had good visibility, and I don't mean monitoring, kind of the tracking kind of software, but really holistic understanding of how employees work and how they can help them get better is where that was kind of the big framing point. But simultaneous with it, we create data breadcrumbs all day long. You go in, you work in Salesforce, you work in Oracle, SAP, on and on and on through these other systems. There's these literally billions of rows sitting inside large corporations of the event logs and other metadata that's just sitting there. And in that information is a very solid picture, probably represents about 70% of the work that goes on in a day, is sitting right there with the right algorithms on top of it, can learn how people work, can learn what the ideal state is, and then from there to really help people. And I'm going to dive in. I'll share my screen now. I'll share my screen. And kind of as I dive into this, one of the things that we did is we sat down up front and we said, hey, let's really break productivity down, because productivity is not just an aspect, as we've been led to believe in the industrial era, of how many hours do you work and how many widgets do you create. In the digital world, there's three elements that sit in here. One is productive capacity utilization, so that'd be kind of this dark blue line over here. I can come down a little bit more. This is coming in and it's looking at a very high level. So how do you use your time in a day? And what it's really looking at, then right now we're operation role is the user face that we're in right now. So there's a lot of, something needs to get from A to B is probably the easiest way to say it. So whether I'm in the back office of a bank and I'm processing mortgages, and you've got an originator, you've got a doc review, KYC, credit going on, and that file's moving through, whether you're a logistics company and you physically are moving packages through the system, could be sitting in here, obviously insurance companies, etc. Interestingly enough, healthcare sits in this, specifically in the perioperative space in the OR. So you've got this case composition coming together. And what our AI does is it actually learns for each job, and including the metadata. So go back to that mortgage, pretty easy example. Processing a mortgage is not exactly 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute throughout. Even if I'm doing the same stage in the process, the same exact task, while tasks can be equal, work is not. So an example, if you are processing a first-time homebuyer's mortgage is different than if you're processing, the third mortgage for an existing customer of the bank with a 780 credit score versus a jumbo mortgage second home non-customer of the bank. It takes different lengths of time. Our AI learns that, and what it does is it looks to see where the variance is in the system. So it's super common for us when we work with a new company that they'll be sitting between 250 and 300% variation on like-for-like work. When I first saw these results, I thought, oh, that's really cool. Helen is fantastic, Tommy's crap. And then our data scientist said, no, that's actually, Tommy has that kind of variance, Helen has it, Dave has it. Mm-hmm. And you can start to see employees, the way we work in a day changes a lot.
So does that mean that there's more, are you finding more variation between tasks than between people?
So like for us is one person doing a task, the same task repeatedly. That's down to the level of like for like. So you can easily see this in a day, but I won't get into some of the details. Later in the day, speed goes up, variation goes down. And I'll show you another area, but mistakes go up. Okay, so coming through in our score. So one of the things that we did, and a lot of people, this is what they like. So there's 3 components to it. So one is looking at, are you using your time in the right way? So how close are you to ideal and how you're using your time? The second one is how reliable are you? So during a given day, over days and in a day, does your work style change a lot? And if you're in a large company, you want to know what the output's going to be. So there could be a really bad Tommy and a really good Tommy. Okay? Mm-hmm. The question is, which Tommy's going to show up? Whereas you, Dave, on the other hand, you may be 5% slower than me always, but 100% on the mark. So we know exactly what we're going to get out of you. We have no idea what we're going to get out of Tommy. So when you're allocating work through a system and you have time deadlines in it, it's a really key piece to know. And then coming on down, as we look into this, you can start to see getting into the quality impact. And here what we're looking at and really cutting in is getting into the aspect of what is your impact on others and on the overall productivity as well.
How do you measure that? The impact on others and the...
Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing here so we can kind of dialogue this. So there's a few ways. So one of the key ways is looking at it is saying and again, I'm going to say kind of a task process related role, because we can talk sales as well, or more knowledge work, and what you see and how the algorithm work is going to change a bit. So this task normally takes, just for the sake of 5 minutes. Whenever it follows Tommy, it takes 6. So you can start to see something is happening. And we're not designed to call out an individual, okay, at all. The companies we deal with are like, we're not trying to get to that. We want the rocks in the system. We're not looking for each pebble of sand, is what the companies we work with are looking at, but they want to start to see where are these coming from so that we can begin to identify what's going on. So I used the example a moment ago that in the afternoons, the speed of work was going up in the afternoons. This is before they used Enaible. And they'd all pat themselves on the back. Look, at the last 2 hours of a shift were really productive or fantastic. And we came in and said, yeah, but your error margin's going up much higher. So it's actually taking you 8% more time to get this done. Because people had to go back in to fix it. They were after that in the afternoons, into shifts, slow down the work a little bit, do more of the queue earlier in the day to reduce the error, rather than looking and saying, Tommy, you're bad.
So I could imagine somebody looking at that and thinking, this system is kind of making me a machine. I'm being measured on this sort of, this metric basis that isn't, reflecting my life or my work around the office. How do you think about making people comfortable with that?
So it's interesting you bring that up because we're not the first person to ever brought this up.
Sure.
You get the flip side as well.
Hmm.
Wow, this is giving me real transparent feedback, so I know where to improve because I do
Hmm.
want to progress. I want my career to go up, and no manager's ever given me this kind of insight into my work. Would be one aspect that goes with it as well. And the other is what it's really doing is helping to not make you a machine while you work, okay, but rather identify where there are opportunities to improve. Where
Hmm.
can they get better? I could get
Yeah,
into another debate on the machine, but we won't do it today.
I remember the one of the an NAI system that was sort of measuring customer service productivity and helping and coaching them through improving that system. And I remember one of the reflections that they had was that the star performers loved systems like this, like the good performers, because they're like, wow, look, I got a good score. This is actually reflecting that I'm actually good at this. I'm productive. I have high quality. I'm actually have a good impact on others, etc. And so there can be that sort of positive reinforcement by including that. Have you seen that? I mean, have you seen much reaction from the workers themselves?
Um, okay, now kind of to dive in, the sales side goes all the
Yep.
way down to the individual contributor. So it's in your hand. Okay, so you can see. On the operations side, it sits quite high in the organization.
Mm.
So I'll give an example. We're in the room often. Let's take the whole supply chain, final mile, kind of as you're getting towards, it's getting to the consumer, not the front end of the raw materials. So companies are sitting here. We all know there's a problem. I want my stuff delivered to my house faster. It's not getting here. It's sitting who knows where. Coming into it, it is a job that the availability of talent for is shrinking rapidly in the world right now. And if you were to take any of this could be from a major retailer, this could be one of the major logistics companies, you can take any of them. They all have the same issues going on. And their core issue is they have metrics that were put in place that were to do X number of average moves per hour. Quite simple.
Sure.
Well, that doesn't take into consideration how many packages are involved, what's the weight of the package, what are the dimensions of the package. So you're getting screamed at. You need to do, just, I'll simplify it, 100 an hour. And you're getting screamed at. And you're going, yes, but doing 100 that are 1 pound each in a 12 by 12 box is really different than doing a mixture of 100 to where they're, averaging weight of 50 pounds and they go anywhere from 12 inches to 60 inches. All of a sudden, it gave the company the chance to see, wait a minute, our metrics wrong.
Mm.
We can be more precise because we can understand what's in a load. And it reduces the friction with the employee that's like, this is not like for like.
Mm.
And these companies are looking at us, again, for the big pieces. It's not in the employee's hands. They're not calling out an employee on it. They're looking for how do they make the system work better.
Yeah. How does your system learn that? So, like, a particular package comes through in a particular form, and for some reason it takes longer, or there's a quality gap somewhere because the handoff of something that's an odd size is just kind of weird. It doesn't fit in the right bin or whatever. Where's the data signals that are coming into your system to actually identify, oh, this is an exception. This is a new thing we need to learn about. We didn't know that this was going to be a different kind of situation.
There's a couple of questions inside there. So number one, where does it learn? So very first step in our algorithm would be kind of getting the right, for the sake of this clustering going on, the right classifications that aren't in their systems. So we use algorithms that put things together in the right classifications. From there, then what we're doing is our core base algorithm is learning the ideal time. So it's saying, hey, when you're moving a 70-pound box, that actually takes 2 minutes. Don't quote these numbers, anybody. I
Sure.
numbers up. But if you're moving a 1 pound box, that takes 30 seconds. And it's learning on that. But if the two come together, it's not 2 minutes and 30 seconds, it's now 3 minutes. So it's learning even how they come together into the groupings. That's the real crux of our algorithm, is actually learning on high volume, high variety at the same time.
That's really interesting, because it's sort of using AI for something that it's really good at, which is, being much higher dimensional, faster scale. And what I hear you say is that it's actually adding a lot more context. It's like bringing context in such a way that like you said, the like for like is, it's an easier conversation to have with employees who are delivering different kinds of products that require different kinds of reactions. So they can have a more productive and so it's less threatening. What about with knowledge work? What about with coordination between, say, teams in an organization, or coordination between middle managers who have to sort of find their way through the different, sometimes competing objectives within a company? Have you got insights from the knowledge work side of things that you generalize to?
We do, and I'm going to go to like kind of the epitome of knowledge work other than the R&D world. Let's go to the operating room. Okay, so you walk into the operating room, and all of a sudden there's a patient involved in the process. We all know this. The patient's in for some kind of surgery that needs to be done, but not all patients are equal. Okay, age, weight, shape, all of that stuff comes to play. But then you've got the purity of an optimization issue going on. You have a physical resource, there's only X number of operating beds, and inside that room you need a surgeon, an anesthesiologist, a scrub, the nurses. You have to line all of the people up at the same time. And coming back to your point about competing kind of demands, all right, I want to do as many surgeries as I can in the day. I'm stuck in another case. You've got a lot of competing demands. And that room at the exact same time, I think it's 83% of surgeries are over or underestimated in the length of time they're going to take. 83%. So what does that mean? That means I'm waiting on my case as a surgeon for the room to get free, or the anesthesiologist to free up. Think about like in an airline when you're waiting on a flight attendant to come, and you're like, how's the flight attendant not here and the passengers are here?
Yeah, we've been there.
Yep. Yeah, I think I was there a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
Put that into an operating room.
And only 17% of the predictions are correct, if I flip
Correct.
those numbers around, right? So there's only 17% of the time that when I think I'm starting at 10:05, I'm actually starting at 10:05, or whatever the boundary is around correct, not correct.
Yeah, and you only need to improve that by a small amount, and it could have a huge impact across
Sure.
the entire system.
Sure.
And Helen, to stay with your point for a moment, now the teaming composition changes on nearly every surgery, because there's pooled resources going on, and who scrubs in with the doctor can affect the surgery time by over 20%. Like, this is the purity of the knowledge work, and I know you're probably thinking more corporate office side, but when you look at this, but who gets together? So you have some surgeons that are fast, some anesthesiologists that take longer time. You've got some surgeons that run it like purely like a process, and they want the exact tools handed to them in the right flow. There's others that rely a lot on, shall I say, the historical way that they've always done it, and there's a lot more ebb and flow in it. And getting that team pulled together, knowing exactly how long, or at least reducing the variability of how long that case can take. Think about the time to treatment shortens, the number of patients that can go through the system. We have, a staffing problem in healthcare in the US. I'm not sure in the last 3 years how all of a sudden we have staffing problems in every industry, but that's a different topic going on. So there's a real need sitting here, because you choose healthcare because you want to make a difference, not stay, eat your life up, having to stay late because cases get delayed and delayed and delayed.
One of the things that's catching my curiosity a lot here is that it's the way you describe the product is quite different than a lot of productivity apps. You know, a lot of productivity apps are about sort of tips and tricks to be more productive and quite rule based. You know, have you thought of this today? This feels like it's operating at a the way you describe it, operating at quite a different level, operating much more at the level of a complex system and capturing the inherent uncertainty in the system that can come from non-linear behavior or feedback and positive or negative feedback. You know, things have been dampened down or accelerated. How is diving into this product altered your sort of priors on what it takes to be a productive person in a system as opposed to be individually a productive person?
We have, it has been said, and I would probably agree with it, one of the crux of our competitive advantage, okay, or differentiation, I'll put it that way, is we brought together the leadership science and the data science. And I'll cut in to answer your question, but when we went to the table, I came from the leadership side. And I can remember sitting down, I was a few blocks from where I'm sitting right now, we were literally on the back of napkins. I was with our data scientist and laying the problem out. And they said, wait a minute, being fast, the discussion did, not that necessarily they said it, has some inherent problems in it. It's not just about being fast. Okay, and there's some roles you don't really want them to be fast in because you're trading a heck of a lot with it.
Certainly like knee surgery, brain surgery, don't necessarily want it to be fast.
Get it right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's really about getting, and therefore we came up with the term, there's an ideal, okay, or optimal that's sitting in it. And then one of the other pieces we said is you can easily solve for individual productivity and hurt overall productivity. So we came at it with that holistic view of looking at it from a company, saying, I care about my overall productivity, and we built from the company down rather than trying to solve for each individual in the equation. So
yeah, this is something that we're pretty passionate about when you think about the combination of humans and machines. You know, there's such a narrative about the individual and not enough about the system. And I think this is fascinating to see someone really focusing on pulling showing the system effects and showing the effect of trade-offs across the system. Like maybe it's better to go a little bit slower because it speeds quality up, you know. And we're seeing this in with generative AI now in coding, that a lot of people who feel they're more productive, well, let's set aside the fact that how someone feels as opposed to how someone actually does could be two different things. But feeling more productive because you're using code that's given to you by ChatGPT isn't the same as being actually more productive with that code, because you can introduce complexities and errors and more complicated code than it needs to be, or whatever it is. And I'm really curious to sort of pick away at this a little bit more as to the individual versus the collective trade-off that you guys are quite unique in, from what I can see right now.
Yeah, because it struck me that the quality impact, right? Is that the name, right? That struck me as something quite interesting, because it does talk about the system, right? The quality impact that I'm having, not necessarily just the quality of my particular task, but at least the way you presented it, there's sort of there's an understanding of your impact on the overall system.
Yeah, because that could be just more than widgets. That could be like an individual makes one decision that actually lowers the decision quality for the entire.
Absolutely.
Or there could be one nurse who has a high quality impact across multiple surgeons in multiple kinds of surgeries, you know, or something. Right.
Absolutely, you're in the crux of it. It's it's not just about widgets. Okay, we don't do a lot. The closest we would come to a widget would be moving a package. Okay, everything else we do, there's either a human in the room, in healthcare example, or there's the movement of an application. They're kind of sitting into that side. There's a lot of processing of paper that still goes on in the world. It's going to go on for a long time, to be really frank about it. There's just too much variability for machines to be able to pick up and replace into that area. But I think you're really cutting into, if we were to talk kind of future, can I take your generative AI comment and think kind of future world and kind of play into that? I love ChatGPT. I think it's a lot of fun. We play with it all the time. But you know what? Sometimes it takes me a hell of a lot longer to do something with ChatGPT than Google. Sometimes ChatGPT is much better. And what I look at is generative AI is just a tool that comes to play into the picture. It's an AI-based tool, but if you really start to think about the future, and this is the place to where kind of we're excited about is, it's the AI is not going to replace humans, okay? Or not in my lifetime, unless there's some drug that comes out in my lifetime's a heck of a lot longer than my actuarial age.
That's a good way to answer that particular question.
So the interaction though between the AI, the ChatGPT, and the human, I feel more productive. Okay, how many prompts did you write to get to that? How many bugs did you introduce into your code? How much more complexity did you cause? What did it do to others? It's bringing it all back together, because if we don't do that, we're going to end up being much less productive than we are today as a system.
No, 100% agree. Music to my ears. Not enough people talk about this. It's all about how individuals are going to become superstars. Well, maybe, but there's all this evidence that says maybe not. But then the real crux is, how do you pull it together in a system that the overall system still actually is coherent and isn't, we don't wire in so much complexity that we end up with, breakpoints in the system that we just don't understand anymore.
Yeah, let's call a spade, okay? Can we do this?
Yes.
All right?
Yeah.
There's already superstars. There's always been superstars, and there's always going to be superstars. That's a class by itself. The question is, how do you raise everybody else up?
Yeah, and that's still the big question. There's no magic answers.
Enable.
No.
Enable.
Oh, okay. All right. There's no magic answer.
Yeah. So I know, question is, do you have a way of describing the a boundary outside which a customer would come to you and say, hey, can we try using Enaible on, in this kind of role area, something? I'm not sure what the right way to describe it, where you go, this isn't, AI is not going to help over here because the quality measurement is too subjective, or like, is there a way to describe where the boundary is, whether it's today or forever? Right.
I'll go with today. Okay.
Right.
Because forever's a long time from now. Number one, where there's no data.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Should be an obvious, but it's not really. So if you start to look, there's not a lot of data on the shop floor in a retail store. You could potentially help with staffing if you really knew how many feet are in the door. You could help with staffing a bit. But can you help the guy who the other day had to grab the Nike shoes for my son from the back? I'm not knocking the job. I'm just like, you don't
have data on when that interchange is with the customer to be able to know what the task was that was taking a while, and why did it take so long to actually solve your son's sneaker request? Well, because he wanted to try in 8 different pairs before, there's no data to work with.
That high variability.
The other would be places where you have to have minimal number of staff, but we're still kind of like frontline retail centric. So, I'm not going to open Starbucks with one person. I'm going to have two on the floor.
Yeah.
Do you, okay.
Yeah.
So those should be roles. And then I'm going to come to more reality, but those are the cutout. But we'll get companies that will say, for the sake of this, they have 40,000 employees. Though, we have 12 people in our strategy marketing team. How would it help them? And we're like, do you know that you could quadruple, you can 10x, you could 100x their productivity and not see it on their balance sheet? I'm not knocking the output on the marketing side. I'm talking straight productivity. Okay. Roles that a few people do it, they don't have much more than the Microsoft suite of data.
Yeah.
You can get some improvement, but it's not really it's not what we're built for. We're built for big companies, big roles.
Yeah. Where there's particular a quality of data, not just data, but it has to be a quality of data that can capture the breadth of the experience. That's the thing that's sort of capturing me here. Like, you have to know the size of the package, not to just hammer this one example, or you have to know the exact diagnosis for the patient in the operating room. You need to know the richness of the data is what actually helps you find the opportunities, because the opportunities are not standard things, that are like, yeah. It's fascinating.
Really, to pick up on that, where it's kind of like a real eye opener for a lot of companies is this data is sitting in different systems, and they've never thought about being able to bring it over and use it for particular areas to actually fill out the picture. And I think that's what I laughed when you said quality, because we haven't seen quality data yet. Okay.
On a spectrum, quality.
Okay.
Higher, better.
Ability to create a full picture.
Yeah.
Is how I would think about it. Can I create a full picture of your work reality?
Yeah.
Or not?
So it is it sounds like it's quite a complex integration challenge, both because there's lots of systems, but some of the complexity will be that there'll be new systems and there'll be new data that's captured. So how do you think about what's the life cycle like with a customer? They're interested, they say, that's great. Like, how long does this normally take to be able to start working? When do they start feeling like they're seeing improvement? How do you deal with the fact that there's yet another system that shows up because somebody adopted SaaS product XYZ, and suddenly you have to then tap into that as well to, improve the whole picture?
Sorry, I think you're a comedian today. Okay. They didn't even have to adopt the new system. They just remember tomorrow they use another system.
Yes.
I mean, there's already 150 apps sitting in here, and oh yeah, I forgot we used this. Those come up and they're a pain. But so I'll walk through our process. So we sell into what we call Enaible Preview. Okay. Companies kind of as you did. It's like, oh, this is interesting. I've never thought about it this way. I want to see it. So they will carve out. We carve out a domain case rather than just a role, because you need to see from begin to completion in it. So we'll carve out and do it at a smaller level. When we set this up, though, it's set up in a way to where they can just hit the switch and let data flow thereafter. And that produces for them what we call a productivity baseline. It's a one-off batch score related. So it's a batch data pull. But as soon as they see that, they see where their opportunity to make improvement sits by using Enaible. It's not like a one-off consulting project. Then the data flows through. Some of what you brought up, we just built that. We were naive when we started, so we solved some challenges or just accepted some pains as reality and didn't know any better. Okay, so the new system showing up, we just kind of concluded that's how people work. New systems will show up. So our canonical form that sits inside, just a role type we have that says that's going to come in. And it is one of the other things we don't ask all we ask the companies to do is get us access to the data. whether they want to do the ETL and dump it into an S3 bucket for us, or whether they want us to hook up to with an API, do hand the keys to the kingdom over perspective. We don't really care how we get it. From when they bring the data in from all the tables, we take over from there. So they don't have to actually go through and figure out how to get to the linking keys and deal with the complexities of the data.
And
So
not to
how
get-
are the, just a kind of a dopey question, but just clarify for me who what the different user screens are. Like, what are the different users and what do they actually see? And how do you handle the different levels of security and access that different people in the organization get to see different things?
All right. So we have executive insights and a productivity baseline, and this would sit for your true senior management, not like a senior manager title, and executive leadership. That would sit there. Some companies, that's all they really want. They don't want any of our web interface that we were looking at after. Then the web interface is designed with two user types in mind. One would be managers in the senior manager term. Okay, so frontline managers in the next tier, 2 tiers up, kind of in a larger company, and then individual contributors, but that's only on the sales side. Would it go down that far? Sitting there. So how do we manage it? One of the things that we do is, there's a couple pieces. We double mask all employee identities. So it's masked on the company side. We have a pseudonymization package that masks all PII information before we get the data. They hold that key. Then we remask what they masked. So if you pulled it up, there is no way that you could, let me say this correctly. The identity of Helen, Dave, and Tommy would not come out. Okay, you could figure it out from, like, if you work with people long enough, you could start to figure out some elements that are happening in it if you were down tight to the front. But that's one of the ways that we manage that aspect of security. To get into the deeper part, I need to bring our CTO on. That's not my specialty.
No, it's fine. So basically it's you don't see that Dave was in that particular operating room, but if you noticed enough and you figured it out that Dave and Helen and Tommy were all in the operating room together, you'd kind of be able to piece things together.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're not getting, there's no like screen grab that says Dave's productivity score is, that hits up. That's a helpful thing to understand, because there's definitely concerns. People, workers are worried about being surveilled and what does this mean and all kinds of things. So it's an important thing to know. Cool.
Have you, if you mentioned that all those years of being on stage and being a coach, that you wish you'd had this then. What are the things that you wished you had most that come from the product now?
I shouldn't admit this out loud because it's not a popular name in today's world, but I've always been a Frederick Taylor fan. Okay. And inside there's really a key statement that caught my attention. He went around and asked 6 people, what do you do? How do you do it? And he said, interesting enough, each one of the 6, same job, described it a different way of doing it, and each one concluded with, and my way is the best way. And he said, but you can't have 6 best ways. Which that really like resonated, which, kind of practical Midwestern boy, like it resonated with me. So coming forward, the piece that really kind of stands out and I love about Enaible is it actually does give you a ground truth. From a ground truth, then you can work to make change. It reduces the opinions shift from opinions on truth to opinions on what to do about it.
Yeah.
Because when we're debating, no, we don't spend that much time in meetings. Well, you do. Here's the data.
Yeah.
You can accept it and live with it. That's your choice. Perfectly fine. Or not. But that is what the data says.
Yeah.
And here's you may or may not have an answer to this, but I'm curious about whether this has given you any particular insight or opinion into the debate over productivity per se in our stagnation or low growth productivity over the last, the productivity paradox, the comment that was made 30 years ago, you can see computers everywhere except in the productivity data. Is there do you have a different insight into the way work is done, especially using technologies or the growth in technology that would contribute to that debate?
There's two questions in here. We have fact in regards to how much time people really work in a day.
Yeah.
And it has raised a lot of going back to some of the, okay. What's changed in my view? A big thinking that's changed in my view that says, wait a minute, if I'm supposed to work 8 hours if I'm paid for it, let's just say that it's time-based and not outcome-based, you should work the 8 hours. Do you, like, or we need to get this balance more correct. Showing up, getting paid for 8 and working 3.5, I'm like, you're wasting your time. Like, do you, like, if you have 4.5 free hours in a day, do you really want to sit in an office chit-chatting with the people there over coffee? Are they your best friends? Maybe they are, fantastic. But like this whole side, there's like some pieces in there that are really clear in the data. There's a lot of wasted time in a day. And I just think if that's the case, turn around and renegotiate the whole contract, okay? And make it a 4-hour, or this is gonna be recorded. I'm not proponent of a 4-hour workday, but make it a 4-hour workday and go play golf. Like,
Yeah.
get the system freed out because there's too much dust in it today.
Yeah.
That's sort of, yeah, I mean, we're straying off the topic here, but it does make me wonder whether there's a sort of a different level of conversation that would be happening around return to office with a focus on a different kind of focus on the data.
There's going to be a lot of different discussions coming. But that's a different topic. I'll come back to that. The other thing I think you can see quite well is less Solo's comment in regards to the technology not showing up in productivity. You can actually see the mobile showing up in productivity. And not, yes, there are the people that are connected all the time into the long hours. You can see enough of a pattern and a gap, and we've not gone to do an observational study to confirm this, that it looks like people are working, stop, pick this device up, do something personal on it, and go back and work. Is that bad? I don't know. Is it good? I don't know. But coming from that aspect, you can just see the distraction element of it coming.
Yeah, that's interesting. With the more robust data, you see that perhaps there's lots of productivity because you're doing lots of personal things at the same time. It's just not necessarily showing up in the way that you'd want.
Yeah, but to believe that, you also have to believe that multitasking is productive, right?
Yeah.
That, well, some of that, and we've got a bit of a sense that multitasking is. I mean, as teachers, we can say that multitasking is utterly destructive.
Yes.
All right, you're triggering things that we can see as well. Okay, you can't use time twice.
Yep.
So all of a sudden you can look and you can see you're in I'm going to stay kind of like office worker related. You're in a meeting, okay, and wow, ping of an email, 5 minutes this, then this. Could it be related to the meeting? Could be. Is it generally? No. So which one are you doing at that moment? Because you're not doing, if you're doing both came down. And you can't technically engage in both at the same time.
I wish more people had better metacognition around that, because then companies might stop asking people to do those things.
Yeah.
And start incentivizing people to be moments of like clear focus. That seems that sometimes the only people who are allowed to have clear focus are the superstars.
Or the ones that work by themselves for themselves.
Yeah. All right. Well,
yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This has been great. I'm really glad that we got to see the product and have the depth of conversation. I think that the thing that Helen picked up is something that I think we will both be chewing on, which is the focus that you have on improving productivity as a system. And we think about that a lot in terms of the inclusion, more inclusion of AI over time. And how do we continue to, we think about it in the world of collective intelligence rather than collective stupidity. And that's about a system. And that's about how we work as a system with, as people and as people with machines. So that particular aspect of what you do is definitely resonating with, sort of.
Yeah. And what it got me thinking was it sort of broke what I realized was actually a bit of a mental set point, which was these productivity apps need for overall productivity increase, everyone needs to see their own personal result. Suddenly thinking, no, yes, you don't. Yes, you need to see the system result and have other ways to think about how the system improves, which then you infer on yourself rather than an AI being tips and tricksy kind of, you have and instructions per individual. That our general intelligence allows us to take that system outcome and say, okay, well, this is what it means for me. Without that, interpretation can be in someone's head, doesn't actually have to be in the AI.
Anyway, so thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. A pleasure. Have a great, I don't even know what date. Oh, have a great 4th tomorrow.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Cool.
Talk to you later. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Spilling sound.